Okay, everyone. So continuing with our intro to logic. So now that we kind of know how logic, all the different areas are in logic, now let's actually talk about one of the easiest things to learn to do, which is using loops. Logic allows you to record several different ways. You could, of course, hook up a microphone into your interface, go into your computer and record vocals or instruments. You could plug a guitar or some type of instrument directly into your computer via an interface. You could use a software instrument and use a MIDI keyboard or drum pads to actually play something manually in. Or you could use something called loops, which are pre-recorded small bits of music that you could arrange and loop, repeat over and over in different ways. And that's what we'll do on this first project. So to get to the loop browser, you go in the top right corner where you have these four buttons. The one that looks like a little roller coaster loop-de-loop is the loop browser. So click that. You see a list of loops. Notice that down the very bottom right corner, it'll tell you how many overall loops are on your computer. Mine, at least at my home computer, it says there are 28,492 loops. The lab will have roughly around that amount, but it might be a little bit different. This, however, is showing a very long, that's a lot of loops to go through. That would take a very long time. So you probably wouldn't just want to start looking at them this way. You'd probably want to categorize them based on what you want to add. And the most obvious of that is what instrument do you want to put in? Maybe you click on instrument and you say, I want to start with a bass sound. So you might click then on the bass instrument. And notice that the loop list down here has changed. Now there's only 3,190 only. That's still a lot. But those are all the bass loops. I could also differentiate further by saying I just want to hear like synth basses, or I want to hear electric basses. I could also go to genre and say I want a specific genre. Maybe I want that to be dubstep or urban or indie, funk, jazz, whatever these things are, even orchestral, whatever that maybe I can do. I'm going to choose hip hop, R&B. And then I could, if I wanted to, I could go further and say, just show me bass loops that are hip hop, R&B, that are intense. And somebody decided these loops were intense. Notice it's narrowed it down now to 30 items, so quite a bit less to go through. Notice that all of these loops, they have an icon to the left, which if you click on it, you'll hear that loop. Right, so there's that loop. This one's blue, this one's green, and then there's some yellow ones. This has to do with the type of loop. Blue loops are audio loops. Green loops are MIDI loops, or they're software instruments. And then the yellow ones are a new thing that's using the step sequencer in the newest version of Logic. So they're different types of loops, and it mostly has to do with how you're going to be able to edit them. But in general, you just kind of like, if you like it, then you can do it, or then you can use it. So either way. I can categorize these. If my list is really long, it might be useful to click on the top where I could alphabetically list them as they were. I could also go to the beats column and say, okay, show me them in order of how many beats long they are before they start looping. So now I've done it where I'm seeing all the ones that are 4 beats long. So I'm going to hear 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a fairly short loop that's going to every 4 beats be looping over and over again. Something down here that's 16, well, it's going to take 16 beats or 4 bars before that particular loop would repeat. The heart column is for favorites, so if you say, I really love that slap bass number 3, you could tick that box, and then you could go up to this very top heart tab, and you could see every one that you've said is a favorite. Tempo is simply saying what tempo were these recorded originally. Logic, however, will always adapt these loops to whatever your project tempo is. So if you recall at the top, it said a tempo is 120. So these are all being played at 120, even though this original tempo could be much slower or much faster. Lastly is key. This is what key were they originally created in. But again, Logic is going to transpose those to whatever your project key is. So let's say I like one of these. Let's find one. not bad. I think though I'm going to use this one. Okay, so if I want to use that, I'm just going to then drag it to this middle area where you can see it says drag Apple loops here to create tracks. When I drag this one, because it's a blue audio track, you'll see that if I try to put it in that first track, which was a software instrument, it'll say this isn't an audio track, this is a software instrument track, so you can't drag audio files into it. But if I go underneath it anywhere, it's going to add a track for me of that type. So it's just added an audio track. Okay, so now I can hit return to get the beginning, hit play with my space bar. And of course it stops when I can visually see that there is no music after that. This little blob of music is called a region, and I can click in the middle of that and I can drag it around, I can place it wherever that I want. But all regions can also do various things such as looping and resizing them. I'm going to adjust my viewfinder, so you see in the top right area I can make this wider or taller, horizontally or vertically zoomed in, just so I can see it a little bit better. So I can kind of see what the audio waveform looks like for that. Now let's say I want this to repeat again exactly as it is. Well, I'm going to move my mouse to the top right and you'll see this loop symbol. It kind of looks like a Q, but it's really a loop arrow, or like a circle with an arrow at the end to signify looping. Notice that if you move your mouse to the bottom half of this region, it looks like a bracket with two arrows. That's basically to make a region longer or smaller, so that's not the same thing as looping. If you want something to loop, it's got to be up there in the upper right corner. Always pay attention to what your mouse is telling you, because it changes based on what you're pointing to. So if I click and drag to the right, you can see that it's looping. It's kind of like copying it, except it is specifically looping it. You can see how the original part is a little bit brighter, it's a little bit whiter, and then it's kind of grayed out, because this is the original loop, and this is simply looping it over and over again. Okay, so there you go. Maybe I like that. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to say I'm going to X out to get back to where I started, and I'm going to maybe do an instrument that is my drums next, maybe. So I'm going to say I can choose, let me get back here. I can say all drums, which is showing both acoustic drums and electronic drums, just any type of drum, or I can choose a very specific type, like I just want to see beats. Just say beats. Same thing, I can choose genre. I could choose the same genre, or I could go to a different genre. That's totally up to you. It's just narrowing down your choices. In descriptions, maybe I want that to be grooving. Okay, so now I've got 633 loops, drum loops that are beats, hip hop, R&B, and grooving. Okay. Well, I got lucky. I kind of like that one, so I'm just going to drag it in here. Now notice I can drop it wherever I want, but I can also then just drag it where it needs to go if I didn't put it in the right place, or I changed my mind. I wanted to start with the bass for maybe 2 bars, a bass pattern, and then I want the drums to start right there. See how that sounds. Okay, so maybe I like the way that that's going. I'm going to loop this a little bit longer so it's the same length. And then maybe right here at bar 5, it feels like a good place for maybe some other instrument, maybe guitar or a synth or something to come in. So again, go back to my loop browser, reset that, go to my instruments. Let's add some electric guitar. Let's say genre is funk. This is starting to sound kind of funky. And then descriptive. Let's make this cheerful. You don't have to do, it's only 2. That seems too cheerful to me, so I want to undo that. And maybe I just leave that blank, and I just have 98 that I would have to maybe go through. That might work well. Again, I'm getting kind of lucky of just grabbing those that I like. Drag that into a new track. Again, this is much shorter than this one. This isn't looping. This is a very long loop, the drum pattern. This is a short guitar riff. So maybe I'm going to want that to loop as well. Now, to me, those are a little too similar in rhythm between the bass and guitar, but I'm going to still use it for our purposes. Now, I might also say, well, I like that guitar thing, but I kind of just like maybe the first 2 beats of that. Well, I basically brought back the loop. I didn't want to loop, but I can go to the bottom right corner. This is where I can make a loop longer or shorter. I can't make it longer because that's as long as the loop is, but I can make it shorter. So maybe I say, I just want it to be 2 beats long. Let's solo that. Okay, so maybe you do that, and then I could loop that, and now it's only looping the 2 beats. Okay, let's hear this looped a bunch of more times and hear that in context with everything else. Okay, so you can get kind of creative. Maybe I even want to drag that loop back in here to get an original one. And I say, oh, I'm going to shorten it. I just want this. Let's see. Maybe I just like that last little bit. So now I'm shortening it the other direction. I want it to basically start there, the latter half of it. Again, you can get kind of creative of how you want these loops to sound. So it's a little bit different there. And then I could copy and paste that. So it's just a way that you can kind of drag loops in. You can manipulate them a bit. These all happen to be audio loops, so there's not a whole lot of editing I can do. But just in comparison, if I were to find, let's see, I don't have any there. Let's go to, take that funk out, and there's a green one. We'll take this dreamy pattern. I'm going to drag it in. Again, bottom area, creates a track for me. Notice this looks a little bit different, so if I double click on it, I can actually change notes by dragging them around. I could change that pattern. So just, that's a real quick way to just show you that you can manipulate these in various ways, but if they're audio loops like these original blue ones, then there's only so much you can do. Okay, in the next demo, I'm going to be talking about further ways that you can edit this type of stuff to make them sound a little less repetitive.